The Last Judgment by Michelangelo. Standing before the Last Judgment is like standing in front of a vision of the end of the world itself. The painting is massive, overwhelming, chaotic, terrifying, and beautiful all at once. Covering the entire altar wall of the Sistine Chapel, it remains one of the most famous and controversial artworks ever created. Painted by Michelangelo Buonarroti during the height of the Renaissance, it captures the final judgment of humanity, the moment, according to Christian belief, when every soul will stand before Christ and face eternal salvation or damnation. Michelangelo began painting the Last Judgment in 1536 and completed it in 1541. It was commissioned by Pope Clement VII, although the work was largely carried out under the reign of Pope Paul III after Clement's death. By this point, Michelangelo was already considered one of the greatest artists alive. He had painted the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel decades earlier between 1508 and 1512, creating legendary scenes like the creation of Adam. But the Last Judgment would be very different from the ceiling. The ceiling celebrated creation, humanity, and divine potential. The Last Judgment focused on destruction, fear, resurrection, and eternal fate. To understand why Michelangelo painted such a dark and intense work, it helps to understand the time period. Europe in the 1530s was in crisis. The Protestant Reformation had shattered the unity of the Catholic Church. Wars, political instability, corruption scandals, and religious conflicts spread across the continent. In 1527, Rome itself was brutally attacked during the sack of Rome, an event so violent it shocked the Christian world. Many believed society was collapsing spiritually and politically. The fear of divine punishment felt real. Michelangelo absorbed all of this anxiety into the fresco. The painting itself is enormous, roughly 44 feet tall and 41 feet wide. Unlike many Renaissance artworks that are carefully balanced and calm, the Last Judgment feels turbulent and almost alive. More than 300 figures twist, fall, rise, scream, and struggle across the wall. Every inch of the fresco is filled with movement. There is no peaceful landscape or architectural setting. Instead, the entire scene exists in a kind of cosmic space between heaven and hell. At the center stands Christ, but this is not the gentle, suffering Jesus often seen in traditional Christian art. Michelangelo's Christ is powerful, muscular, and terrifying. He raises his arm in judgment, appearing almost like a divine force unleashing the fate of humanity. His body resembles that of an ancient Roman god, showing Michelangelo's fascination with classical sculpture and anatomy. Around him are saints, martyrs, angels, and the resurrected dead. Beside Christ is the Virgin Mary. Unlike many depictions where she intercedes for humanity, here she appears withdrawn and solemn, almost shrinking beside the overwhelming power of divine judgment. The moment of mercy seems to have passed. Judgment has arrived. Surrounding Christ are saints holding the instruments of their martyrdom. One of the most famous figures is Saint Bartholomew, who was traditionally believed to have been flayed alive. He holds his own skin in his hand, and many historians believe the face painted on the skin is actually a self-portrait of Michelangelo himself. If true, it reveals something deeply personal, the artist placing himself among the judged, vulnerable before God like everyone else. Another striking figure is Saint Catherine holding the broken wheel used during her torture. Saint Sebastian appears carrying arrows from his martyrdom. Throughout the painting, suffering becomes a symbol of faith and endurance. Below Christ, the dead rise from their graves. Some are pulled upward toward heaven by angels and saints. Others are dragged downward into hell by demons. Michelangelo paints the human body in every possible state: hopeful, terrified, desperate, triumphant, ashamed. Muscles strain as souls attempt to climb towards salvation. The damned twist in horror as they realize their fate. One of the most haunting sections is the lower right side of the fresco, where the damned descend into hell. Here Michelangelo drew inspiration from Inferno by Dante Alighieri. The ferryman Charon appears striking souls with an oar as he transports them across the river into damnation. Nearby stands Minos, the infernal judge of the underworld. Michelangelo even gave Minos the face of a Vatican official who criticized the painting, turning the fresco into a personal act of revenge. The fresco caused controversy almost immediately after it was unveiled. Many church officials were shocked by the sheer number of nude figures. Michelangelo believed the human body reflected divine perfection, but critics argued the nudity was inappropriate for a sacred chapel. One cardinal reportedly described the work as more suitable for a bathhouse than a church. After Michelangelo's death, some figures were partially covered with painted drapery by another artist, Daniel de Volterra, earning him the nickname the Breeches Maker. Despite the controversy, The Last Judgment became one of the defining masterpieces of Western art. It marked a major shift from the calm harmony of the High Renaissance toward a darker and more emotional style known as Mannerism. Michelangelo distorted proportions, exaggerated movement, and filled the composition with emotional intensity. The painting feels unstable because the world it depicts is unstable. Humanity is no longer shown confidently at the center of creation. Instead, humanity is fragile, exposed, and subject to divine power. What makes The Last Judgment so powerful even today is that it speaks to universal fears: fear of death, fear of judgment, fear of meaninglessness. But it also speaks about hope, redemption, and transformation. Some souls rise toward light while others fall into darkness. Michelangelo forces viewers to ask themselves where they would stand in this cosmic drama. Today, The Last Judgment remains exactly where it was painted, inside the Sistine Chapel in Vatican City. Millions of visitors travel from around the world to see it every year, yet no photograph fully captures its scale or emotional force. Standing beneath it in person is an entirely different experience. The figures tower above the viewer like living beings frozen in the final moment of history. Over the centuries, the fresco has survived smoke, candle soot, war, and restoration debates. A major restoration completed in the late 20th century cleaned centuries of dirt from the surface, revealing vibrant blues, reds, and flesh tones that many people had never seen before. The restored colors shocked viewers who were used to darker reproductions of the painting. More than 480 years after its completion, Michelangelo's The Last Judgment continues to fascinate believers, historians, artists, and tourists alike. It is not simply a painting. It is a vision of eternity rendered in plaster and pigment. A warning, a masterpiece, a meditation on human destiny, and perhaps most importantly, it is a reminder of the Renaissance belief that art could confront the deepest questions of existence itself. Even now, standing silently on the altar wall of the Sistine Chapel, The Last Judgment continues to ask the same question it asked in 1541. When the final moment comes, what will become of us?